He looked at all the pictures I could scrounge up of Daryl and everything. So the day he preached his funeral up here, he did a heck of a job.
This is for Daryl.
Daryl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then the thing evolved. So Geneva started telling me, she said, well, how many of them are coming up? I said, I don't know. I said, they're having all the funeral service down there in the church and everything, but Perry's going, I think we're just having a burial. She said, well, we're going to have to feed everybody. I said, well, I don't know, I can handle all that by myself. So, Geneva and I decided we'd do all our cooking. Well, then one of the boys called me, and I said, look, I'm not trying to be pushy, but can you give me a guess on how many people? Because we want to feed you. Well, it was up in the 50s.
Oh, my.
So we decided we better try to go use part of the church, and Donnie said, we were going to use the old school building. He said, no, y'all go over and use family ministry building. Well, and I spent a day and a half cooking like crazy. Geneva spent, well, a couple of Sunday school classes heard, you have never seen so much food in your life. And so all these people from Florida up here, and all they want is, does this church have a cookbook? And we got plenty of.
Now, what church is that you go to? Bethel
Baptist.
In where?
Right down the road.
Right down the street. The Missionary Baptist Church?
No, that's New Hope, right up the street.
Okay.
And New Hope's where I joined when I was 16. I was baptized in a pond that doesn't exist, but the light pole, it was an irrigation pond, the light pole's good. A Junior Bellflower, the guy that farms my farm.
Yeah.
I laugh. I say, I go by that pole. I can always remember that day. And,
that's funny.
And we go out, Reverend Hogan and I go out in the pond, and about the time he goes to dump me, we're on the, on the slope, and here he and I both go.
No way.
And as I came up out of the water, my grandmother handed me a towel. She said, son, you're going to learn not to wear white breeches to a baptism. I'll never forget that as long as I live.
That's funny.
And then my first wife and I lost a child at birth, and she's buried up there.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And when the church I went to in Milledgeville, one of the associate pastors that came in a few years later, and he and I were around each other for a year and a half. In fact, through my divorce and all, he was just, both the pastor and him were just the best friends and just sat with me. Just amazing what they did with me. And right as he was leaving then to get his own church, and he and I got talking one day, and I told him, I said, well, I'll be retiring. And he said, well, where are you going? I said, back down to Tarrant County. Tarrant County? He had been pastor up here at New Hope. Was his very first church.
Really?
Out of college. So he told me, he said, well, if you get down there, he said, look up a dentist, a friend of mine, Mike Dent. Well, I get down and we're going to church together.
How about
now,
that?
Mike left when we had a mess and lost our pastor a couple of years ago, and some good folks that I really cared for left the church. But yeah, and so Dent said, well, when you see Tim, you tell him, says, is he made a good Baptist preacher? Has he got one of them floppy Bibles? So they stick it up in his flop. So tell me, he said, yep, see it flops. But
now, Fabian, you, for my girl's sake, you were a principal, right?
Right.
Of what kind of a school?
I'd spent 17 years I spent 4 years as a high school principal, 17 as a middle school principal, and 10 as an alternative school principal.
Alternative.
Bad kids.
Uh-huh. You were the guy they didn't want to face, huh?
Well, that may sound bad, but I had a knockoff on Yago. I walked through the valley of the shadow of death. It had always been my calling. See, I only went into education to take time off to go back to law school. See, I started law school when I was 17, and I burned out. And I mean, I was the whiz kid at the University of Georgia, and I just burned out. And I got hooked on education, and it didn't take long to figure out that the good Lord had me in a spot for a reason. I kept thinking, wish you'd picked a spot where I could have made some money. And as it evolved, it became so boring to me. You know, we won awards, we did all kind of things. I was state president of middle school principals. I was on the leadership board in the state. I got to sit down with governors and ramble out budgets. And I said, but what I really want to do is work with these kids that nobody else wants to. So when Zell Miller was governor and thinking about having alternative schools, he asked me, he said, if I give Putnam County some money to start one up a year before we do this, will you talk that board into doing it? I said, that board don't like me. I said, because I tell them how I feel. And I said, but I'll try. Well, I talked them into it. I didn't know it was going to talk me into doing the job, but when they couldn't find nobody, I said, I'll do it. And so we did the first alternative school. And so for 10 years in Putnam County, we were able to not ever expel a child from school. I told them, I said, oh, I got lots worse for them. They're going to have to live with me to get better. And so for 10 years, and you know, it's been funny since I retired. I've run into a couple of them down here. I had a big black kid. I'll never forget him, bad drug dealer. Poor, the only way he could survive, really. I'm walking through Walmart one night, and all of a sudden this big guy comes rushing up to me, just hugging my neck. It's him. He wanted me to meet his wife and his children.
Wow, that's awesome.
And his wife nearly brought tears to my eyes. He said, you know how my kids get raised? They hear, if Mr. Fain was here, you wouldn't do that for long. She said, I have heard so much. And she said, in all honesty, he credits you with him being alive.
That's amazing.
But I've run into several. I told people I never had those instances of running into a kid that hated my guts or anything, even though some of them maybe should have, you know.
Yeah.
Because I was old-fashioned. Like one day we were in alternative school and we were having this wild car chase with this guy that had stolen a car, robbed a bank, and already caused 2 or 3 crashes. And I just told him, I said, well, we could solve that. They know he's got to cross the river. Just be on the other side with a bazooka. As he comes, boom, well, he has needs a fair trial, Mr. Fain. I said, that's a fair trial. I said, get him. He threw it. And they, you know, but it's a part of my life. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Never had so much fun making money before. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, but you know, I realized that chasing the dollar is not what this life's about.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, you're blessed with so much health. We're never guaranteed another day. Why not go enjoy them? So, I think I've accomplished that.
Well, you've been retired 6 years now, right? You said
6 years next month, yeah. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many friends of mine didn't live 6 years.
You know, Dad talks about that. He says a lot of people, you know, they get all set up for retirement and everything's in order. They retire and then they get sick. He said you got to retire at about 35